record on my computer. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jenna Ryan Show. I'm so excited today. I have a very special guest, and I'm just so excited. I'm beside myself. I'm just, I'm starstruck because I love this guy, because I followed everything that happened to him, of course. And this is Jake-Angeli Chansley. Did I say that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Jake-Angeli Chansley.
Jake-Angeli Chansley, and he is known as the American Shaman. He was present on January 6th. We all have heard about him. He was one of the most prominent figures of January 6th. People really loved showing him wearing his gear, his shamanic gear with his horns. And I personally saw him on January 6th and stood a couple of feet away from him. I have videos of him on my phone. I should have taken a picture with you, Jacob. Welcome to the Jenna Ryan Show.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
Yay, awesome. So I just want to kind of get into everything that we possibly can about you. You're also an author. You're a motivational speaker. You're definitely a leader, because I saw you on January 6th. And you and I were both just preaching away right there on the steps. I don't know if you remember, but we were, and I did not forget you. And you're a Navy veteran. So you're a veteran. You are a spiritual activist and a shamanic practitioner. So and then you went to prison for January 6th, and you served time. You were like one of the very first people to get thrown in prison. And I was just freaked out, upset about that. And you served how long?
Well, in prison, 27 months. 2 months was spent in halfway house after my sentence in prison was like pretty much wasn't over, because technically halfway house is Bureau of Prisons, but I
Yes.
did 27 months in prison. 10 and a half of that was in solitary confinement.
Are you
And then
kidding?
oh yeah, that was the worst 10 and a half months of my life.
I was praying for you constantly and watching every word that came out of the news about you because I was so worried.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The prayers definitely helped.
Yes, they did. They did. So, okay. So taking me back in time, January 6th, can you explain what brought you to January 6th? What brought you there?
Well, I went to the second Mega Million March in December, on December 12th of 2020.
Right.
And I thought, things were going to be the same as they were in December in January. I thought
Right.
it was just going to be a peaceful protest, and I mean, millions of people showing up in DC, both in December and in January. I was like, well, I'm not going to miss that.
Right. Right. So how did you get there?
Well, me and some friends caravaned.
Okay. Caravaned there. And so what area of the country are you from?
Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, Arizona. Okay, awesome. So you went to the DC rally, and we were called out there, and you had a sense of duty and just a sense to stand up and really just to hang out with Trump fans, Trump supporters, and to hang out and to show solidarity with our grievances. Is that how you felt?
Well, yeah, for the most part. There's a lot of other spiritual reasons that went into my being there.
Wow.
Um, DC is built on electromagnetic ley lines. Are you familiar with the ley lines?
I am not.
So, you know how the Earth has an electromagnetic field that surrounds it, right?
Yes.
Well, that electromagnetic field has lines that run all the way down to the core of the planet. And because of that, they also cross on the surface of the planet. And where these things crisscross,
Okay.
then the electromagnetic energy and activity is higher in those areas. It's a higher frequency, it's more charged. So that's
Okay.
why the Washington Monument, the obelisk, is built where it's at. That's why the House, or I mean the Congress building, the Supreme Court, the White House, the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial, all these things are built on these electromagnetic ley lines.
Wow. I had no idea. I haven't heard of this. But being a shaman, you would know about these things, Right, right. But I've
That's
been really
right.
reading up on the flat Earth theory, and I'm intrigued by that. Um, but we're going to keep this show very YouTube friendly. So we're not going to talk about anything that YouTube would censor. We're going to try not to, hopefully. We'll get past all the censors. But anything that, is censored, I'm like, why? I want to talk about that. Whatever I can't talk about, that's what I want to talk about. So that's very
Well,
interesting.
yeah. Look at what they're choosing to censor and what they're choosing not to censor. They're not censoring anything about flat Earth.
Right,
And the reason I think that is because it's misinformation.
right.
Anything
Well,
that's true,
yeah.
anything that's true, they censor.
I see that. I see that. I see that a lot. But I've been watching, and it's interesting. So, you went there for the spiritual experience of the vibrational energy in that area. And so I think Phoenix, and Sedona and places like that, are those also what you would consider energetic areas?
Absolutely. Now, a lot of the ancient sacred sites, like the pyramid at Giza, the obelisks all over the planet, the pyramids here in Mesoamerica,
Uh-huh.
Serpent Mound, all of these places all over the planet are all built on electromagnetic ley lines as well. But there are also natural formations on the planet that are basically formed based on this electromagnetic activity.
Okay.
So the elements are shaped by the electromagnetic schematics that are in the ley lines themselves.
Wow. Wow. So you had some really deeper reasons than anybody I've spoken to go there. So were you concerned politically at all?
Of course, yeah,
Okay.
but one thing we have to remember is that our elections have been corrupt.
Right.
JFK got in office because his father had connections with the mob, the CIA, and the FBI. So it
Okay.
goes all the way back to JFK and even before JFK regarding our election corruption. And think about it. Every time the Republicans lose an election, what do they scream? Oh, election fraud. Oh, election interference, what have you, right?
Right.
But every time the Democrats lose, what do they say? Oh, the elections are rigged, the voting machine's this, the voting machine's that.
Right.
So, in my personal opinion, it just is evidence that the centrist view is
Okay.
that we have corrupt elections. Is that so hard to believe?
I don't know if that will make it past the YouTube censors,
I'm
but
so sorry. I'm sorry.
hey, it is what it is. If we don't make it, we don't make it. But I really want to stay on YouTube because you can't find me as easily on Tumblr, Rumble. But you can find me on YouTube. So let me just preface that by saying this is our opinion. We don't have any direct evidence of any kind of problems, but it is our opinion that there's been some issues throughout history. And, it's all alleged. We don't know anything for sure. We are just simply stating our opinions based upon our own personal research. And so that's the way that goes. So then so you go there because you felt compelled. It was an open door, a call from the president to go and for a specific purpose, which is to protest or to stand in solidarity with the America First belief system, right?
Well, I mean, I don't agree with everything that President Trump has said or done. I
Right,
don't agree with everything that the people on the right say or do. But
right.
at this point, it's become quite obvious that there is a uniparty in DC of
Yes,
Republicans and Democrats that are loyal to the expansion of centralized power, are loyal to what some people call the deep state or a shadow government, a
right,
government apparatus that is behind the scenes controlling everything in this country. And
right.
that is something that if we don't stand up against now, then, our children will suffer far more than we ever possibly could.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. And do you have children?
No,
Me either, but I still care. But I don't, I went down there. I don't have kids. I just went down there as a part of what I consider to be my civic duty. And, I was just, what do they call it? Freedom isn't free. You got to pay your $1.05. And, I took time out of my life to go down there, and it was a sacrifice and that kind of thing for me to go. It's not like oh, hey, I want to go to a protest first week of, 2021. It was something that I felt compelled to do. And I assume that is how you felt as well.
Well, yes, but I'm of the belief that if you're protesting against something, then
Uh-huh.
you're already creating a polarization in ideology and in beliefs.
Okay.
So I'm more so about investing in
Okay.
the future, investing in our children, investing in freedom, investing in the truth,
Okay.
really. And so I don't take really the protest stance
Okay.
because it's against something. I take the investing stance because it's for something.
Got it. I really like that. That's a good way to look at it. And so you were investing in the future by showing up and just being a part of the hoopla. And what caused you to dress as you did? Was it a costume? Were you serious? What was that all about?
Well, I've been dressing that way for like over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
I've
Okay.
been, yeah, yeah, I've been going to be a spiritual activist, not a political one,
Okay.
for well over 10 years in that regalia. The regalia is shamanic in nature. It's akin to wearing priestly robes.
Wow.
So, in the shamanic tradition, it's like dressing the way that a shamanic priest of sorts would. Now, I realize that a lot of people look at it and go, oh,
Ah,
but that is kind of the point in that I take largely from the Hiyoka shaman tradition. And what
okay.
they do is they do a lot of things that are kind of counter to the cultural paradigm. They do
Okay.
things that are somewhat shocking to the cognitive system as a
Chocolate.
means of awakening the tribe to the cultural fallacies and the cultural programming that they prescribe to.
Wow.
The Yeah, yeah. So the in the shamanic tradition, the wearing of animal furs and stuff like that is, and or horns or whatever is, or even a feathered headdress is a way of, first of all, you earned those things.
Okay.
Second of all, you are one with nature because you have and are wearing these things that are from nature. In particular, with my shamanic regalia, the fur is made of coyote tails
Okay.
or coyote tails and then coyote fur. So in the Navajo tradition or the Dene
Okay.
tradition here in Arizona and in the Southwest, the
Wow.
coyote is like a trickster. It's like a
Okay.
deceiver.
Hmm.
So I'm wearing the fur of the trickster. I have the trickster by the tails. You see,
Wow.
the trickster can't pull the wool over my eyes. The trickster messes with the buffalo, he gets the horns. So there's a lot
Okay.
of symbolism behind it.
Interesting. Wow, I didn't even know that. I had no clue. And so there's symbolism behind your uh sacramonial
Regalia.
regalia. Thank you for the word. So this is symbolism. You're from Arizona. There's this diverse population at the whatever we want to call it, the fiasco, as there are people. There's just such a different. All of us were there for different reasons, for our own purposes, with different life experiences, and bringing our own selves there. And I do believe in divine destiny personally. And I believe that God brings people together for such a time as this, and he will bring those people that are supposed to be there. And I don't think anything happens by accident. And I think that you are uniquely called for this hour to, bring us your message. And I think it's beautiful. And so then you go to what part are you able to say what did you go in the beginning? I think, I don't know when you went. All I know is we were standing there together in the very peaceful time is when I saw you. Like we were all chatting it up.
Mhm.
Is that when you were
Well,
there?
I can't really discuss too much of what went on that day because my lawyer and I have filed a motion in the courts that
Good.
is there to vacate my conviction and my sentence. So
Okay.
he has urged me not to speak too much on the details of whether it be the footage on Tucker Carlson or my behavior, my actions on that day. So that kind of limits me a little bit to what it
Okay.
is that I can talk about regarding that day itself.
Okay.
But I mean, if you ask the question, I'll tell you if I can answer.
Okay. Well, my first question was, or is, that comes to mind out of curiosity, your feelings on this. We experienced one thing in person on that day, January 6th. Was that the same experience that was portrayed in the news media on the 7th, 8th, and onward?
Well, let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Operation Mockingbird?
Yes, I am. I'm part of that.
Okay, so oh, you're a part of that.
No, you don't know who I am, but you were in prison. But they made mockery of me. I was running I was in the news cycles over and over again. For if I even breathed, they would be like, "Oh, Jenna Ryan did this."
Oh,
So
I see what you're saying. So they raked you over the coals is what you're saying.
thousands of articles all over the world, every news media you can imagine, I was in. So it was Mockingbird Media. It was the same thing over and over. So yes.
Right. So Operation Mockingbird, for those that don't know, is when the CIA infiltrated the media in the 60s and
Oh,
the
I didn't know that.
70s to curb, it was to curb the narrative regarding the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement. And so, I mean, anytime the government gets power, they don't give it back. It
Right.
only gets worse. So
Okay.
Operation Mockingbird is still in full swing. And if you've seen that video where they have all those news stations and news anchors from all over the country talking about social media and the spreading of misinformation and without checking facts first, and this is very dangerous to our democracy, and that
Right.
was like all over the country, and they're all
Yes.
saying the exact same thing.
Right.
Operation Mockingbird in full swing.
Right.
So what the Operation Mockingbird media is designed to do is to divide the country into propagandized and what is called compartmentalized groups. And
Okay.
these compartmentalized and propagandized groups are given different talking points regarding the same events.
Right.
And then these talking points are counter to one another so that the country is always butting heads. You
Okay.
see, they're always arguing about what's on the television. So you got CNN over here with the liberals and the Democrats. You got Fox News over here with the conservatives and the Republicans. And they're both looking at the same event, but they're both being given different talking points from these different news outlets. And then
Right.
once the TV is turned off, they start butting heads about these talking points and these events. You
True.
see, and now the other part of Operation Mockingbird is not just about what is being covered and how it's being covered, but
Okay.
it's about what is not being covered, what is not being discussed, what is not having the light shined on it, because then and only then can you truly control the narrative. Now,
True.
when it comes to many events, whether it be January 6th or anything else, Donald Trump, Russia, the real crux of the issue is that the talking points are designed to, first of all, create outrage,
Right.
right? So that people are constantly angry. They're constantly feeding this instinctual need for conflict.
True.
But it's also about contaminating true information with disinformation
Right.
to create a misinformation stream that
Right.
the CIA then controls. So through the use of misinformation, you control the narrative.
Right.
Through the censoring of or the not reporting of events, you also control the narrative. And
Right.
this is why I just keep coming back to in my Twitter spaces or in every interview, I always say this.
Mhm.
We need to start creating our own talking points. We need to
Right.
stop being so reactive
Right.
to the talking points we are handed from on high, from the Operation Mockingbird media.
Absolutely. And that is my life's goal. That's I can only handle my little area, but that's a big part of why I'm here and I'm doing this interview. I mean, you should be being interviewed all over the place, but this is part of what they are not wanting to talk about. They don't want to talk about Jacob Chansley. They don't want to talk about Jenna Ryan, but here we are, we're not going away. And so, and what I want to explain, I mean, what I want to know is how it felt. And I understand that it's my, and you explain that beautifully. And I love the way you explain that. And I'm glad you did. But beyond that, also, I want to know from a personal perspective, how was the experience of that gaslighting event where it was, in my opinion, from where I was, it was totally different than the experience of being there. Did you have that cognitive dissonance?
Well, yes and no. I had a much more larger cognitive dissonance based on all the propaganda and the misinformation, disinformation that was out in the media about me personally. For
Right.
example, that I'm a failed actor, or that I gave myself the name Q Shaman or QAnon Shaman. That none of those things are true.
You didn't give
This
yourself that,
notion,
they gave that name to you?
well, Alex Jones did actually, and
Oh,
then the
okay.
media ran with it. And that's the first time Alex Jones ever said anything that the media, ran with.
Wow.
Yeah. So the also this narrative of mental illness, totally unfounded, not true. So there's a that was really difficult for me personally. What
Right.
was also really difficult was now dealing with the aftermath, not just of that narrative, but also the narrative that it was a violent insurrection.
Right.
Now, if you want to know what a violent insurrection looks like, all you have to do is look at what happened in Afghanistan in August of 2021,
Okay.
right? That's
Right.
a violent insurrection, okay?
Yes.
So the media, and this is a part of the Operation Mockingbird apparatus, and this is why I just call it Mockingbird Media, not just because of Operation Mockingbird, but because they mimic the talking points of each other. All they did was say violent insurrection, violent insurrection, violent insurrection, deadly insurrection, deadly insurrection, deadly insurrection. And it just pushed it in people's minds. And then it
Yes.
programmed their subconscious
Yes,
brain.
it did.
And then everybody was calling it what the media was calling it.
Right.
Everybody then became a part of this Mockingbird apparatus where everybody's just saying the talking points to each other. And then the moment you try to challenge that narrative, you become socially ostracized. You
Right.
become marginalized.
Right. Or they actually, I think, intentionally marginalize you by calling you such names and by making innuendo and accusations about who you are as a person. And that's mudslinging. It's political 101, politics 101, mudslinging, name calling, and objectifying the opposition or whoever they choose to pretend is the opposition. And then everyone believes this causes the person who is the target, for whatever reason, doesn't even realize they're a part of this thing, to become severely abused, emotional abuse. It was, and I feel like I personally, and I know you probably feel, emotionally abused by this system. And the ramifications it's an everyday battle. It's a stigma. I feel a stigma. And I think that if I'm strong, I've done a lot of personal development, so I'm very strong, and I have to battle. Like, it's like you're driving along and somebody says, you're mentally ill. And you're like, no, I'm not, or you're a horrible person. I'll get emails, you're a horrible person. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a great person. I know who I am. And so it becomes an exercise in learning to stay grounded and rooted in your truth, in the truth of who you are, because opinions matter. Humans are very hardwired to connect. And so it really attacks the very core of our humanity when you begin to ostracize and objectify a people group. And it's like they say, that's what they did in Germany in the very beginning. They didn't just throw people into the Holocaust. They didn't just throw people into the gas chambers. They first ostracized them, made them wear a yellow star, made them stop going to school, accused them of horrible things. That was the beginning of genocide. We're not going to make it on YouTube. I'm telling you right now. But anyway, I can't help myself. So that
Well,
feeling,
if we're not supposed to talk, if they don't want us to talk about it on YouTube, we probably should be talking about it. Because
right,
here's the thing. Remember, it's about controlling the narrative.
right,
And and censorship is the assassination of an idea. All right. So they want to kill certain ideas, because if those ideas develop momentum, then their rollout of this psychological warfare apparatus is stifled, or there's resistance to it.
right,
So that's why I don't even have a YouTube channel.
right,
I used to, but then I got kicked off, and I came to really start to understand the level of not just censorship, but of limiting free speech.
right,
And there's a reason why that was part of the First Amendment when the founders founded our country, because they understood the crown was stifling free speech. Because if you can stifle free speech, if you can get people to self-censor,
right,
then you have won their mind. You have
right.
won their heart, because now they're afraid to say something that might be considered controversial.
Right. But there's conflicting needs. So I find myself with conflicting needs on a daily basis. I need to be, I'm a single lady. I need to date. I do real estate. I have to sell real estate. I have my J6 background. I need to do that. I'm always like balancing my needs. What do I need here? And so it becomes very difficult to fit in every place that I need to fit in. But I think with conversations like ours, it's just not possible for us to actually sit down and discuss something that YouTube is going to like. There's just no way. So that's fine. But so back to I like where we're going with the brainwashing, with the mass hypnosis, the mass trance, and everyone falls into a line because humans are hurting. We heard, you know, and if we look at what other, we have those mirror neurons in our brain, and it causes us to copy the other person. And that's why so many people were so easy to be masked, and all the things happen to each person, because no one wants to be the outlier. No one wants to stand out. No one wants to be made fun of. But I think that it takes people like myself and like yourself to say no while we can, because we still have the First Amendment as far as we know. And if we don't, I mean, I think the First Amendment is the crux of freedom.
Well, let us recall that these are God-given, unalienable rights. They
Right,
cannot be taken away. They
right,
can only be surrendered. And that is the goal of the Mockingbird media and the centralized power apparatus, the deep state, the shadow government, is to create a psychological warfare campaign that frightens people into surrendering their rights
good,
to a centralized power.
good.
So our rights don't come from the state.
No,
Our rights come from God,
that's
you
it.
see. And so that right there is why we have to use our rights. Otherwise, we lose them. So don't self-censor. Don't be afraid to talk about something. Don't be afraid to peacefully assemble. Don't be afraid to have and exercise your right to bear arms.
Right,
These rights are given to us by God,
right,
not by the state. They can
right,
only be surrendered. They cannot be taken.
right. I like that. That's a great way to put it. And that's the truth. And what I'm writing my book right now, and I just so happen to be right in the middle of the part where I'm writing about how I was so attacked and abused by these people, and they all were repeating over and over the same things that the Mockingbird media was repeating, and the letters and the emails and it was like this. It was a setup. It was a collusion. It was coming from all parts, and it was abuse, and it was harassment. And it's there today. And thank God we have Elon Musk, who came in and really helped my life and helped to allow me to exist without being attacked as badly. But it's still there, and these people still believe like this, and it is very annoying.
Well, what happens is, first of all, it's called controversialization.
Okay.
And what it is they did it in particular. A great example of controversialization is, do you know who Gary Webb is?
No.
Gary Webb is the guy. He was a journalist out of San Jose that discovered that the CIA was trafficking cocaine into the country during the Iran-Contra
Okay.
controversy.
Uh-huh.
And he broke the story first.
Okay.
And instead of reporting on what he was talking about, the Mockingbird media began to controversialize him and whether or not he cheated on his wife, whether or not he was a good man, whether or not he could be believed. They didn't talk at all about the story that he was reporting, which was
Right.
factually true.
Okay.
Because it was damning to the CIA, it was damning to the centralized control apparatus in DC.
Right.
So because CIA Operation Mockingbird media is what we're dealing with, they of course covered for the CIA and their trafficking of drugs. And they controversialized Gary Webb. Now, when you controversialize somebody, what you're essentially doing is creating a straw man or a straw man argument. Are you familiar
Okay.
with the straw man
I
argument?
am familiar with that, but not as eloquently as you. Keep going.
Okay, so the straw man, they did it with Trump, they did it with me. And just for the sake of simplicity, let's talk about what they did to me.
Okay.
So they pointed at me and said, horned man bad,
Right.
horned man bad, horned man bad. And they just kept repeating it over and over again. And then what they did is they assigned a label, QAnon shaman, QAnon shaman, QAnon shaman, over and over and over again, so that
Right.
it got placed in people's minds. And then what they did is they attached all these different labels to QAnon shaman: insurrectionist, rioter, MAGA supporter, QAnon quack, whatever,
Right.
right? And then what that does is that creates a straw man that they can use to create propaganda, to create a straw man that they can tell everybody to hate, but they don't actually address the crux of who the person is. You
Right.
see, if the media really wanted to know who I was, all
Yeah.
they would have had to do was read my books. All they would have had to do was watch my videos on Rumble. All they
Right.
would have had to do was do a little bit more investigating. But instead, what they did is they went with the surface level investigation. Oh, he has an acting profile online. He's a failed actor. And they didn't bother to mention that I had voiceover profiles and that I could do over 30 different voices and accents. They didn't
Wow.
bother mentioning that.
Right.
But they went with this failed actor thing because they knew it would create controversy. You see, they also went with this whole, is he BLM, is he Antifa narrative, at least especially in the underground media, because I was seen at a BLM Antifa rally, but I was there marching as a counter protester, marching with the police. None of that got said. You
Okay.
see, so it's all about creating controversy. It's all about getting these factions, these tribes to butt heads in the country. You see, so
Right.
it sounds to me like you've been made into a straw man as well. They
Yes.
created a different version of you so that
Yes.
way they could never actually address who you are and what you actually stand for.
Yeah, they created a totally different person, and it was very uncomfortable to watch a different person be developed. And there, I didn't have an equal platform to overcome it. But now they've lost attention in us because they're on to their next thing, and they kind of want to forget what this is a giant sucking narcissist. Okay, if you want to talk about, I'm very into this. It's not, a narcissist personality, whatever that is, will create smear campaigns and try to create a narrative and make everybody hate whomever they're threatened by. If they're threatened by this person, or let's say they're married and they're getting a divorce, then they're going to try to make the whole world around them dislike this person by just bringing up negative things about the person. And then you have all the people that attack the person who are actually what we would consider in this world flying monkeys. So you've got these minions, these flying monkeys, and they create them and they come after you. And eventually it all goes away because the truth comes out. And that's kind of where we are now, is where the truth is going to come out. It's got to come out because I mean, people are going to slowly, the yoke of this false identity that they put on you is eventually going to have to come off, because the truth rises to the surface eventually, and everybody's going to start going, you're kind of not that bad, if you wouldn't say this or that. They just kind of wake up to who you really are, because you are so much more than what you,
Straw man.
a straw
Than
man.
a straw man.
Yeah, you're so much more than that. You're so much more than what they said. You have so much to offer. You're human. You're a real person, and you deserve respect. And so they want power. And the way they're getting power is by convincing their group of people that a certain group of people are bad and creating the controversy. That's giving them power. And when we buy into that controversy in any way, shape, or form, we're giving up power of our own minds, as well as over our future freedom.
Yes. Well, let's talk about that really quick. So what we're talking about here when we talk about brainwashing, especially brainwashing on a mass scale, is three things. Number one, neuro-linguistic programming, the use of linguistics to program the neurological pattern in the brain, in particular in the subconscious brain, because the subconscious brain is like 95 to 93% of brain power and processing. And that ends up affecting the conscious perception of reality in the other 5 to 7%. So it's about neuro-linguistically programming the subconscious brain, and you do that through trigger words. And these trigger words create instinctual responses within the human organism, emotional responses, whether it be for survival. If you say deadly insurrection over and over and over again, then that causes a emotional response. If you say racist, if you say white supremacist, if you say trans genocide, etc., then these things end up triggering these emotional responses in the psyche, in the subconscious brain. And then when you combine those trigger words with trigger images, with images that are also designed to create an emotional response, then the effect is compounded. And these things merge together to create a more neuro-linguistic programmed view of reality. Now, the next step, because neuro-linguistic programming is about programming the individual mind, and that largely starts in public schools or government-run schools. Now, the next phase to that is infiltrating and using things like entertainment and media corporations to create what is called critical factor bypass. Now, critical factor bypass is basically where they saturate all of the environment, all of the media outlets, every newspaper, every magazine, every cartoon, every news station, even in the corporate world, like every store, every bank, with a very specific message. And this specific message gets repeated over and over and over and over again. And because it's being seen everywhere in the environment, it causes the critical thinking factor in our brains to be bypassed. And then the subconscious mind is programmed on a massive scale because everybody's seeing it everywhere. So it must be true. If it's everywhere in the environment, then it must be true. And like we were saying before, people are social creatures. They don't want to be ostracized because they are not buying into the narrative that is everywhere around people. Now, those two things, neuro-linguistic programming and critical factor bypass, lead to something called mass formation hypnosis or mass formation psychosis. And what this is when you have 25 to 30% of the country that believes this illusion that has been created. They have been neuro-linguistically programmed. They believe the critical factor bypass narrative. And then based on that external stimuli, these trigger images, these trigger words, they create a radical view of reality, and this radical view of reality radicalizes 25 to 30% of the country. And we saw that happen in Nazi Germany. We saw that happen in Russia with the USSR. We saw that happen in China with the creation of the Chinese Communist Party. So this is mass formation hypnosis, 25 to 30% of the country becoming radicalized and then pushing the agenda of the people that are controlling the NLP and controlling the critical factor bypass. Now, all of that being said, all it takes is 5% or more of the population of the country to stand up and say, no, you are radical, you are crazy, we're not doing this. This is not happening on my watch. You're not going to tell me what to do. You're not going to tell me I have to wear a mask. You're not going to tell me I have to stay indoors. You're not going to tell me I have to get the jab. You're not going to tell me that I have to support Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when that happens, this notion of hypnosis goes out the window. So when you hypnotize somebody, the only way they can be hypnotized is if they are open to being hypnotized. If somebody doesn't want to be hypnotized, they won't be, right? So on a collective level, what this is about is hypnotizing the collective consciousness of a nation or of the world through these propaganda techniques, through these psychological warfare techniques. You see? Now, if you have enough
consciousness,
yes, yes.
So it's
yes.
all about, I just have to say this. I'm sorry. I have to say this. It's about consciousness. Everybody has to get conscious. Okay. That's what I had to say.
Well, yes. And so hypnosis is a state of being unconscious.
Right.
Right. So this 5% or more, and I think we're at more than 5% here in the United States and around the world.
Yes.
Is now in the process of basically countering this hypnosis. And it's not allowing the subconscious mind of the species, the collective consciousness of the species, to fall into this hypnotic state.
Nice.
You see?
Okay.
So now, because individuals aren't being hypnotized anymore, then they have to censor that voice so that the hypnotism agenda can roll out. That's why they're censoring people on YouTube or on Twitter or whatever, or why they were doing what they were doing on Twitter with the, suppression of Hunter Biden's laptop and stuff like that.
Right.
Because it's about controlling the collective consciousness.
It's about, and then I think that as we become more conscious, because I didn't just wake up knowing the truth. I had to claw my way out of the falsities that were around me. I had to be willing to look at the truth. I had to be willing to face the pain of the truth, because it's painful to face the truth, because sometimes the truth is not fun and it's painful and it causes pain, and people would rather just go watch a football game and not think about it, because they don't want to face the painful truth that not everybody is out for their good, and that there are some people out there who are trying to take their power away. They're not even cognizant they have power. They don't even have any, they're completely robotic. They're their cognitive, cerebral cortex is completely bypassed. They have no reasoning capabilities. They just believe whatever they are fed. And part of this became worse. Sorry to go to the negative, but I have to, became worse through the use of social media. We have so much benefit from social media. I've been a social media coach for years. I could go and I could use social proof and say, I'm a great whatever. See, yada, yada, yada. I teach people to go get social proof. Why is social proof so valuable? It's because a person doesn't have to think whether that person is good or bad. They just can see, oh, everybody else thinks he's good, then I think he's good too. And that really saves a lot of brain space. And they don't have to sit there and go look up all the credentials of every single person. They can just automatically know this person is good. Well, in this case, that technology has been used against us, because they control the technology, they control the message, they got hold of all of our outlets for sharing information, and it's only making us stronger. If you want to look at the positive side, it's only going to help us ultimately, because we're not going to give up. We're not going to go quietly into the night. We will stand up and continue to speak the truth. And for me personally, I want to get the truth out to as many people as possible. And so that's what I like to do. So you can't talk about January 6th, which is fine. Who wants to talk about that? I'm so sick of it. I just want to say we are more than that. We have more to offer this planet than just that. And also, but can I talk about your prison thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So prison. So on top of it, they throw you in prison. This really is stigmatized in our community. They used our justice system against us to create the narrative, because people that go to prison are people that consciously, maliciously criminally do things. Those are the prisoners. That's the segment of the population we consider who deserve prison. And when they put prison and murderer or whatever next to our names, it is such an insult, and it is such a stigma, and it's just such a sad thing. And then there you were in prison by yourself in solitary confinement, having to deal with the heinousness of that. And not to re-traumatize you, but let's say, what was the number one great thing you learned through that horrific experience?
Oh, well, I suppose faith and patience, they kind of go hand in hand.
Okay. Faith
Yeah.
and patience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for example, so when I was first, so I when I found out the FBI was looking for me, I called them
Yeah, of course.
and I was like, okay, so you guys want information on me? What's up? Let's talk. You
Right.
know, we scheduled a meeting to meet here in Phoenix upon my return from DC on January 9th. And it was there I was subsequently arrested. And then I was taken to Florence, Arizona, in the prison they have over there, the CCV. It's like a private prison. And then for like the first like 6 days, it was just misdemeanor charges. And I thought, oh, no big deal. I might have to serve, 30 days in jail or something, okay. And
Wow.
then they slapped the felonies on me. And then they said 25-year maximum. And I freaked out, oh my God, what? You know,
Oh my
and
God.
then I was in my cell. I had a Bible with me. And I was in my cell, like freaking out. And I was like, God, whoa, show me you're with me. Why did, show me you're with me. Help me to calm my nerves here.
Oh my
So what
heaven.
I did is I closed my eyes and I said, God, I'm going to open this Bible and I'm going to point to a very random verse, and I want you to speak to me through these words. So I closed my eyes, I opened the Bible, and I pointed to a random verse. And I opened my eyes, and when I looked at the verse, it said, I am yours and you are mine. I have redeemed you and called you by name, O Jacob.
Oh my God.
And I was like,
Oh,
whoa, you
whoa.
know,
I've got cold chills.
that's a trip. Yeah. And so like then I thought, well, I don't feel redeemed, but okay,
Oh my
but what was
gosh.
interesting about it was that, and there's all sorts of things that happened I
Of
could get
course.
into that helped to renew my faith and give me patience and to
Wow.
trust God. But think
Wow.
about it. I didn't know that Tucker Carlson was going to be airing that footage 3 weeks before my release. Okay. I already had a release date. Okay. So Tucker Carlson's footage and all that had nothing to do with my release.
The peaceful stuff. Tucker Carlson showed you being let
Yes. Oh,
in the
I know. I saw,
doors.
I saw it when I was in prison. I
That's
was
crazy.
watching it real time. I was like, holy shit. It's me. He's showing that footage. Holy shit. You know?
Yeah.
So, but I never could have, like, it could not have been asked for. I could not have planned it better
Oh, yes.
than God planned it to have that footage air 3 weeks before my release. So
Amazing.
I'm sitting in prison after that footage is released, and everybody's like, he's still in prison. What the hell? Like the cognitive dissonance for people was very real.
In that moment,
So
I remember.
yeah, oh yeah. Well, even afterward, because there's still people that are being blown away by it.
Yeah.
Now, what also kind of was cool about it was that, and this is where we get into patience and faith,
Mhm.
is that I had to patiently wait for what some people would say was vindication in the court of public opinion. And the
Right.
court of public opinion is the most powerful court in the land, I assure you.
I
And it is
promise.
largely, underestimated. And
Yes.
it is that court of public opinion that the Mockingbird media seeks to control.
Interesting.
So that right there was, in my opinion, almost like the fulfilling of that biblical reference in the beginning of my prison sentence. I am yours, you
Yes.
are mine. I have redeemed you and called you by name, O Jacob.
Hallelujah.
And it's really helped me to, especially during times like these where people are freaking out about nuclear war or the situation in the country and inflation and all this other stuff. It's really helped me to just go, well, pretty sure God's got this, you
Right.
know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you've had plenty of time. Sometimes he has to bring us through a season of that persecution because you were persecuted. I was persecuted. We've all been persecuted for our beliefs because of the two-tier justice system. Other people who did things much worse have been treated way better. And it's almost like I felt kind of like Otto Wambler, not quite as bad, but he went into a restrictive area in North Korea. And so they sent him to life in a prison camp, and where he ended up, he died, 23-year-old college student who went into a restricted area. We don't have restrictive areas in the USA, and we could talk all day about how they let people in and all of that, which is all going to come out. And so it was just overwhelming. And so you had plenty of time. And so were called for such a time as this. And, the scripture that comes to mind for me is nothing evil formed against you shall prosper. Every word spoke, basically he's going to redeem you. And, I can't remember right this second, but every word spoken against you, he will condemn, you will condemn he's going to make everything right. And so we know that we were chosen to be where we are. And I say this to every single person who I consider to be heroes, and anybody that committed crimes, they deserve to pay for the crime. I don't think that anybody should not pay. And I don't think they believe they shouldn't pay. I just think overdone sentencing is ridiculous. And I think it was just stupid. And so that's what I think. And I think everybody's,
Well, especially when people like Hunter Biden are
yeah,
getting, sweetheart plea deals.
right,
When there's clear, like I met so many people in federal prison that were there because they were a felon and they had a firearm. Okay. Now, these are people that are serving like 10-year sentences because they possessed a firearm. And in some cases, they didn't even have it in their hand. It was
wow,
just in a backpack in the car that they were driving. Okay.
right,
Or
right,
in the car that they were a passenger in. And the gun
yeah,
wasn't even registered in their name.
wow,
Okay. It was registered in the name of the driver of the car, and they
right,
still got a 10-year sentence. So how is it that Hunter Biden literally has pictures of himself holding a firearm when he's a felon,
right.
and he gets a little on the hand?
That's
Okay.
proof.
And now this is the funny thing. Where's Black Lives Matter on this? Because,
Right,
this is literally like the definition of what they're calling privilege,
right,
where you
right.
have a guy that's the president's son who's
Yeah.
committing these crimes like weighing crack. They have that on camera, where he's soliciting prostitution, where he's actually been photographed with underage girls, where he has a firearm in his possession. And for all of these things, people in the poverty-stricken communities are getting 10, 20 years. But
Yes,
this guy isn't even going to see a day in a jail cell.
yes.
And
I think,
yet they're taking FBI agents away from terrorism cases, from child rape cases, from murder cases, and placing them on misdemeanor cases for January 6th.
for grandmas with cancer who no criminal history. Yeah, that's what. And
Right.
so,
And so it was two-tier justice system. What
yes,
now this is the question I like to ask. What would evidence of government corruption look like? What would it look like if it were there and in our faces? What would the evidence of that government corruption look like? And how would we identify it? Would it be creating foreign proxy wars to channel public money into private hands? Would it be a sweetheart plea deal for the president's son when other people are frying? Would it be 10% for the big guy? Would it be the ability to erase 30,000 emails and not be investigated or tried?
the problem
Would
is,
it
okay, the problem we face in this thing, and I think you and I could probably figure this out. It's not you know, if you sit there and think about it long enough. Okay, the problem is people believe. If you ever brought that up to someone who needs to, okay, the people that need to know these things, that are keeping these people in power, that are keeping that thing going, or staying hypnotized, because they can't stay in power if we do not consent. We have to consent to this. So the people that need to know, they would immediately say, well, Trump, well, Trump, well, Trump. So you can't produce any evidence of anything contrary, because they always will just bring up Trump. And it's
Well,
because they've
what
been
you're talking
brainwashed.
about, are you familiar with Yuri Bezmenov?
No.
Look him up. There's like a 7-minute video of Yuri Bezmenov is an ex-KGB operative in charge of psychological warfare in the USSR. And he defected to the United States in the 80s. And he did an interview where he talked about how the Soviet and he actually verified that there is a global communist conspiracy to take over the planet and create a communist global government, one world government.
Yes.
He was saying that the communists are not interested in creating a militarized war with the United States, because they know that they can't win.
Right.
And that what their real goal is through espionage, which it isn't like James Bond type stuff, that he said that's like 10 to 15% of the money goes to that kind of espionage. He said the other amount of the like 90 to 85% of them funding goes to what they call ideological subversion or psychological warfare techniques, where they
Okay.
use infiltration into
Right.
a country instead of invasion with armies. They infiltrate very specific portions of the system's apparatus, and then from this infiltration they carry out a plan that is 4 strategies deep. Number 1 is called demoralization. And
Okay.
demoralization, he said, takes 15 to 20 years to carry out. And what you do is you infiltrate the schools, you infiltrate the media, and you infiltrate certain political offices. And then you push communist, pro-communist propaganda in all of these institutions to brainwash one full generation, 15 to 20 years worth of children.
Right.
And then are you familiar with that?
No, it's happening. I mean, this is where we're
Well,
at.
it's happening right now, right? So then what happens after demoralization, and actually he said this about demoralization, is he said, and this is why I'm bringing it up, is that you could bring documents to people. You could bring verifiable proof, video evidence that
Right.
evil is going on and these people are corrupt and blah, 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 blah. And they will not believe it. And
Mhm.
they won't believe it because the cognitive dissonance to getting that information is so profound that they have to question everything they've ever been taught and believed, right?
Right.
So they would rather reject the messenger than accept the message.
Right.
Now, that's why you can take the facts to these people and they will Trump, well, Trump, well, Trump. And it's
Right.
like, well, look, are you saying that Joe Biden isn't corrupt? No. Yeah, I'm just saying Trump is. Okay, but you're not denying that Joe Biden is corrupt. So
Right.
why are you backing this guy? Right? Now, the next step to the 4-step process is demoralization, then it's what's called destabilization. And
Okay.
that's where you have this whole generation of kids that have been brainwashed, colluding with and working alongside these infiltrators within the system. And
Right.
then they all work together to destabilize the socioeconomic and geopolitical system within the country,
Right.
right? From there, from that destabilization, you get the next phase, which is crisis.
Right.
So the destabilization ends up creating crisis, whether it be supply chain crisis, whether it be economic collapse, whether it be train derailments or
Yeah.
whatever, pollution in the rivers or in the water, what happened in East Palestine, etc.
Right.
So then you get demoralization to destabilization to crisis. And then once the system has basically been destroyed and these infiltrators that have been creating all of this chaos are in positions of power after all this has been carried out and they've promised everything to people that they were going to fix all these problems that they created,
Mhm.
then once they get in power, they do the last phase, which is called normalization.
Right.
Now, I ask you to recall, what was the slogan during COVID? The new normal.
I hated that word.
Normalization.
Right. 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 And that's, yeah, we were watching it go bananas. And if you are I think that a very important task in this hour is to help people just become conscious, just become awake, just to start questioning wherever you are, whether it be, you're just unhappy, you feel sad, start fixing it, because you can actually fix your own sadness. And these people who are going through this pain, in this trance, they're not happy. They're feeling inside themselves a great deal of pain, because this is if you're not conscious, you are psychologically hurt. You are feeling daily pain. Okay, daily shame, daily pain, daily guilt, daily stuff that's not yours, that you can come out of. So I think that, I do a lot of work on my Self-Love You channel, and I think that work is really good because it helps people start going, wait a minute, what is really going on? But anyway, the media totally slammed me to the point where I'm just like, I can barely even talk, because they mess with my head. It really messes with your head when you get attacked, but that doesn't mean you should not stand up, because at the end of the day, you become stronger somehow. I'm finding my strength. It's hard through the whole thing. Are you feeling better now that you've only been out a couple months?
Yeah, of course I feel better. There is definitely still a certain low level anxiety, because after you go through something like that, it does have an effect on your psyche. But the thing
Yes.
is that it's like David Goggins, anti-fragile, can't hurt me. You know what I mean? You cannot hurt me. You're all that pressure turned me into a diamond, into a super diamond. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Right. Yes.
And that's one thing that you have the choice. Are you
Yes.
going to allow this pressure to destroy you, or are you
Right.
going to allow it to make you a stronger, better person?
Exactly.
And this is the antithesis of what they want. They want you destroyed. So
Right.
by being destroyed, by being psychologically uh, vulnerable,
Mhm.
you are giving them exactly what they want. Now, I would also like to say, in your case, if the media gave you all this publicity, use it, girl. Use it.
No, so
Take that momentum and use it and direct it in the direction that you want.
the problem is that I tried to soothe everybody, because I was freaking out. And because I had to sell houses, and if I took a drink of water, it was a headline, and it was like, this scumball Jenna Ryan is taking a drink of water, and I couldn't sell any houses. Like, I had to sell some houses. So I didn't sue them, but I said, I'm about to, if you don't stop it. So right now, the whole media has me on a litigation hold, which is fine, but I'm still known. But, what do you use it for? What are you going to use yours for?
Well, in long story short, there are okay. We'll give you a metaphor, and then I'll explain how it is that I'm going to use all this momentum. So in judo, well, actually, let's start with in martial arts. They call it martial arts and self-defense, because
Okay.
when somebody is attacking you, they leave certain portions of their body vulnerable to defensive attack. Okay. And that finding those exploitable parts, those vulnerable parts, is an art,
Wow.
a
Yeah.
art of self-defense, right?
Okay.
So in judo, the idea is that when your enemy is attacking you, you use their momentum against them, so that you expend as little of your energy as possible, they expend as much of their energy as possible, and you use their attack as a means of self-defense.
Huh.
Now, there's also a portion of martial arts, or a form of martial arts, called mantis. Mantis is where you get your fingers like this, and what you do is you use it to strike the pressure points. Okay, so anywhere that you on the body, if somebody's attacking you, they usually leave pressure points vulnerable. Now,
Okay.
if you use this tactic to hit these vulnerable pressure points, which are about the size of a quarter,
Okay.
then you can actually disable their whole nervous system.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's intense stuff. It's banned in martial arts competitions because it can be deadly.
Wow.
Now, and it can also leave people paralyzed.
Uh-oh.
Now, check this out. We are literally being attacked as a species. Our planet, our species, our nation are all under attack. I mean, think
Right.
about it. Their poison is in the water. Their
Yes.
poison is in the air. Their
The food.
poison's in the soil. Their poison's in the food. There's poison on the television and in entertainment. There's
Right.
poison in the airwaves, the electromagnetic frequencies that we use to communicate with our cell phones and cell phone towers and satellites and all that stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And what has happened is that this control grid has created something called full spectrum dominance. Now, full spectrum dominance is a military term. And what it means is that they control the psyche, the mind, through psychological warfare. And that's actually the #1 battleground. And I'll get to that in just a second. So they control the psyche. And by controlling the psyche of a nation, or the collective consciousness of a nation, then they are able to then control the land, the water, the air, the subterranean, deep underground military bases, space or extraterrestrial portions of the grid, the chemical and biological agents, and the technology. So phones, computers, the airwaves, radio, etc. So the mind, their control of the mind allows them to have full spectrum dominance over all of these things. And that's what the governments, the corporations, and the banks have done, is because these globalists know, these what I call less than 1%ers, because these less than 1%ers know they cannot be God, what they did is they created a system in which they could play God because they have full spectrum dominance.
Okay.
Now, think about it like this. All of this momentum where they're coming at us has really left them vulnerable in more than one way. And the two ways that we can actually use that momentum to our advantage, and we don't even have to attack, we can just move them out of the way, is this. You ever heard of Tesla Tower technology?
Yes, I've heard.
Okay, so Tesla towers are built on the electromagnetic ley lines, going back to the ley lines, right?
Oh,
and
they
what
are?
they Yes. And
Okay.
they amplify the electromagnetic signal on the ley lines to a many mile radius beyond the ley lines and that tower. And in the process, they give everybody in that radius infinite, free, clean, wireless electricity or wireless energy.
Wow.
Now, think about the implications. All of our wars are fought over what? Resources.
Okay.
So if we make resources infinite, war becomes obsolete. Think about this. These towers can also be used as a communication tower so that we can actually use the Earth itself to send and receive wireless signals as opposed to using satellites, cell phone towers, etc. Right?
Good.
So now we have a whole new communication grid that the Silicon Valley elitist types don't control. We don't have to use their cell phone towers. Yeah, exactly. And they want us on that grid because then they control our communication. And the #1 thing in warfare is to control the enemy's communication lines and their information waves. Okay. Next we have the transportation. Okay, transportation grid. You can actually use these electromagnetic ley lines like they're electromagnetic highways. And Nikola Tesla invented a car or a flying vehicle that could use these electromagnetic highways to travel. So now we have a whole new supply chain that's not only cheaper, not only faster, but it's also safer. Right. And also, you can also control the weather with these Tesla towers so that things like hurricanes and tornadoes hitting cities is a thing of the past. We could literally green the deserts, and we could use these frequencies to clean up all the pollution that has been created by these less than 1%ers and their system. So that right there, that one technology allows us to render the old system completely obsolete and create independence for anyone and everyone that uses it. And what these less than 1%ers want is total dependence.
So
now,
parallel
the other aspect,
economies, parallel.
Yes, a parallel economy. Yes. And you know, hold on a second. Let me show you something. Do you know what these are?
No. What are they?
These are what are called gold backs.
Oh.
Okay.
Dollars?
And what these are actually pure gold. These are like like gold dollars. Okay. And each of these is like $5.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So we could actually create a parallel economy with these.
Yeah.
Okay. Of having the real value in our hands, because you can smelt these down You can
Yeah.
smelt these down and have 24 carats of gold.
Okay.
So yes, a parallel economy. Now, the other aspect, the second patent that I wanted to bring up, and then I'll bring it back to this martial arts thing, okay? The second patent I wanted to bring up is Dr. Rife. That's Royal Raymond Rife, R-I-F-E. He
Okay.
created a machine in the 1930s that used frequency and sound to destroy disease. So similar how you can destroy a wine glass with frequency and sound, you can
Right.
also destroy cancer cells and viruses and parasites with frequencies and sound and not cause any damage to human tissue.
Wow.
So think about what their full spectrum dominant system is. It's control of the resources, it's control of the communication, it's control of transportation, it's control of the weather through things like HARP and the chemtrails and all that. It's also control of healthcare. Now,
Big
if we
problems.
can find what's that?
Those are all very, very big problems that we're being.
Yes, and if we don't solve
We're
them
in a
now,
prison. It's a prison. It's a
yes,
prison of sorts.
it is a
It's
matrix.
not as
It is a
bad as
matrix.
prison. It's not as bad as prison, but it's pretty bad in term when you really think about it, like how beholden we are to the pharma, big pharma. I lost my mother to cancer, and the whole process was ridiculous with the chemo, and it was horrible. I mean, it was just a horrible, horrible scene. And our food, they just the FDA just USDA just passed a law where they can feed us food that is lab grown meat. And so we can't even trust the restaurants anymore. We have to cook our own food. We're having to go back to the days of, the old West because of what all's going on. So, I mean, it's overwhelming, quite frankly. It is overwhelming for me to even, it's just a daily thing.
Yeah, it's a daily grind. Now, here's the thing though, and this is what we have to start doing if we really want to create a better world, okay? These less than 1%ers think decades and centuries ahead,
Right.
okay? We have to start thinking decades and centuries ahead. We cannot talk about, oh, we need to destroy the old system. That's not the solution. Similar
Bingo.
to how it is that the automobile industry did not seek to destroy the horse and buggy industry. They
No.
just created better and better automobiles that made the horse and buggy industry obsolete.
Lay down new pipes.
Think
You
about,
lay down new pipes. You don't destroy
right.
the old pipes. You just go start laying down new pipes.
Exactly. So creating a new system is the way to make the old system obsolete. So that's why I bring up Tesla Tower technology. That's why I bring up Dr. Rife, because it handles 5 very important aspects of this full spectrum dominant system that will allow us as human beings to have an independent system that is not controlled by these less than 1%ers. And we are creating something new. We are not fighting something old. And in this way, we are also creating a neutral territory that Republican and Democrat voters can get together and agree on. Because I think Republican and Democrat voters both can agree that if there's a cure for cancer, and there are many, if there's a cure for cancer, then it should be released to the public in spite of the fact that it has a negative effect on the pharmaceutical company's profits.
Well,
If
we're in
there
trouble
is an
because they're not going to let that happen.
well, no, but this is the thing. This is the mind, okay? Yes, we can do this. They don't have a say in the matter.
Okay. Well, think
Do you
about the
understand?
innovation. I'm just all of a sudden the thought that comes to me as you're talking is, wow, there's been so much innovation that has been stifled. This is like the dark ages because of these 1% globalists who are like that. And I'm totally catching the vision. I catch the vision, and I've thought a million times that why don't we have big Zoom calls? Because I guarantee that they had Zoom calls for QAnon Shaman. I mean, there was more than what, don't you feel that they were on a Zoom call where they literally mentioned you by name and they were like, blah, 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 let's talk about this. Let's do this. Like somebody crafted they crafted
narrative.
it before we
Yes.
went. But then when we went, we happened to fit over, like they need this, they need this. We need this actress. We need this actor. We need someone to do this. We need someone to do this. And then we can do this. And this is a plan. They're planning out everything. And so how do we, as whomever we are, whatever group we stand for, awakening conscious people, come together as groups and get out of the rigmarole of the North or the South, get out of the rigmarole of red, right or left.
Well, and that's what I'm talking
Binary.
about is that by talk. So we talked about psychological warfare techniques, right? And
Right.
neuro-linguistic programming, critical factor bypass, and mass formation hypnosis. Okay.
Right.
So these same techniques can actually be used to deprogram and dehypnotize people. So
Okay.
it starts with the individual. And that's why I continue to come back to Dr. Reif and his machine and Tesla Tower technology. Okay. Because think about it like this. With both of these inventions, if these individuals that are brainwashed, right, neurolinguistic programmed to believe a lie, if they look into Tesla and Tesla Tower technology, if they look into Dr. Reif, what are they going to find? They're going to find three things. Number one, they're going to find government corruption at its inception here in the United States in the early 1900s with the international banking cartels smearing Tesla and controlling the economy and getting rid of Dr. Reif and his machine in the 1930s. Okay,
Right.
so that the Rockefellers could own the healthcare industry. So what else are they going to find? They're going to find all of the uses for these technologies that I just listed. Okay.
Right.
What else are they going to find? And this is very important. They're going, in order to understand how this technology works, you have to understand three things: energy, frequency, and vibration.
Okay.
In order to understand the secrets of the universe, Nikola Tesla himself said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So
Right.
by learning how this technology works, the secrets of the universe unfold before you. So now we have a spiritual element to this technology and understanding how it works. We also have the understanding of how the corruption started here in the United States. And we have the solution to all of these problems that these corporations are creating that are owned by these less than 1%ers. And so then what happens is you've de-neurolinguistically programmed an individual,
Okay, wait,
unbrainwashed them,
I got
basically.
something. So marketing is what gets us here. It's marketing. It's a marketing campaign, a drip campaign. It's a globalist drip campaign, or whatever you say, CIA, the three-letter agencies, whomever is doing it, they're not visible. It's a drip campaign, and they're in unison because a united drip campaign is highly effective using today's technology to move the masses and to put the masses in a trance. So if we, as the 1% on the other side, were to come together as a collective and create our own systems of ideas that we would like to spearhead, then all we have to do is come together and repeat the same message. And then
Yes.
it will become a domino effect on these others. Right.
And that's what I was about. Yes, that's what I was about to say about critical factor bypass. Is exactly what you just said. Is that then we in the underground media, in the undercurrent media, start pushing these ideas, and it's really simple. It's these two ideas: Tesla Tower technology, Dr. Reif and his machine, and a cure for cancer. And the thing is, both people on the right and on the left can get behind the idea of an infinite, free, clean wireless energy device and a cure for cancer. It creates a middle ground for everybody to come and agree on. And once that happens, once our area of the media gets saturated with this message, then it starts to deprogram people, and then we create a mass formation phenomena, except toward symbiosis, toward love and unity and harmony, away from the full spectrum dominant system and the creation of a parallel economy and a whole new socioeconomic geopolitical system.
Perfect. Okay, I think we did good today. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Great talk.
Now, hold on really quick. Let's bring it back to martial arts really quick.
Okay.
So we are being attacked. We are being attacked. But
Yes.
These are the two places that they have left themselves vulnerable because gas prices are through the roof. The supply chain is collapsing, right? The healthcare industry is falling apart. You see, so these are the areas where they've left themselves vulnerable. And we can use this momentum that they've created where they've made everybody's lives miserable to propose these new ideas and strike pinpoint mantis style and disable their whole system by creating a better system that makes them obsolete.
But it needs to be a collective effort. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We are so separate as a because we're just like, we've enjoyed our lives, we've gotten fat and happy, we've sat back because our forefathers fought for our country, they fought for what they fought for. And we thought, like growing up, I said my pledge of allegiance. I didn't know, let them run the government. Those, I'm going to go and start companies, I'm going to go and become a success, I don't want to worry about those petty things. And now we've come to a place where we have to start worrying about those things, because now we're realizing what happens when we get fat and happy and lazy. So we have to get proactive, we have to come together. But and the only places right now that are organized to come together in are the red and the blue, the left and the right, the binary system. And then also, then you get caught up in fighting on, who is a creep and who is not a creep, and who is the, and then you get stuck in that mid-level of consciousness or low-level consciousness, where you're sitting there fighting about things that don't matter. It's a level of narcissism. It's a shallow, it doesn't matter. And it's not true. It's not anything that really affects anything. Who cares? But then you get caught up very easily. We're so easily distracted.
This is my proposal to that, Jenna. So I have a proposal that unites all fronts, okay, in all people, and brings all things coming together at one centralized location every single week, okay?
Okay.
So every single one of the state capitals all over the country, including our national capital, all of these capitals are built on ley lines. Now,
Wow.
it is through these buildings on these ley lines that law is created that affects our minds, affects our emotions, and affects our behavior.
Okay.
Right? What we can buy, what we can sell, et cetera, correct?
Okay.
And in this way, they are creating code that is being plugged into the electromagnetic ley line of the planet, and then affecting our collective consciousness.
Really?
Okay. So what I'm proposing is that every single Saturday of every single week, 3 p.m. on the East Coast, 12 p.m. on the West Coast, people go to their state and local capitals, or even just ley lines in their areas, but state and local capitals, because that's where the ley lines are, and they do not protest. What they do is they invest in this idea of the future, invest in the idea of a cure for cancer, invest in the idea of infinite, free, clean, wireless energy, invest in each other and this notion of unity, invest positive energy and love into the ley lines, while these people are no longer in the building. So they don't have control of the ley lines on Saturdays. We would take control of the ley lines on Saturdays, not take control of the buildings, the ley lines that the buildings are built on. That's the power they seek to control. So think about this. I want you to really think about and imagine for a second that we'll just say 30% of the America First MAGA crowd and 15% of the Democrat crowd who are dissatisfied, and all of the independent crowd who are dissatisfied with the way things are going on, that these people got together every single Saturday and invested this positive energy and prayed and meditated and was having fun and being happy, and they held signs that said, Dr. Rife, we want the cure for cancer now. Tesla Tower technology, infinite, free, clean, wireless energy, we want it now. Or just something as simple as love equals unity and peace is the prize. These types of signs, and you come down and you invest that energy into the ley line grid system. Then you are literally talking about waves of positive energy moving over the country every single week and being plugged into the grid system. And you are having people on left.
It brings me up to, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray, I will come and heal their land. So spiritually speaking, energy, God is the most powerful energy. I mean, we could go I could go talk for hours about how we're in a spiritual battle, and it's a spiritual warfare, and God has dominion over the earth, and we just have to take dominion over the earth, and we just have to claim it and speak it out, and it all fits together. And so, that's, of course, we all have to love the Lord.
So what I'm proposing is a combination of spirituality, of unity, physical unity,
Uh-huh.
of technological innovation,
Okay.
creating a demand, and the taking over of the ley lines once a week consistently until the prayer is answered and we get our country back. So
I
this
hear you.
and this is really important because nobody's really saying this stuff. And
Right.
it's because people don't understand the terrain. They
Right.
they're not fully aware of how complex the situation is. But it's actually really simple if you just have somebody break it down. At this point, all we have to do is just do it. That's why the last Saturday I went down to the Capitol and I did this. There's pictures on my Twitter and video on my Twitter of us doing like a prayer circle
Oh my
in the ley
goodness.
lines at the
Wow.
Capitol.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
So think about the idea. You're on the your Central Time, right?
Uh-huh.
So think about the idea of if people in your city or your state were to do this every Saturday, and because you are Central Time, that would make it instead of noon, that would make it 2 p.m. your time. 2
Right.
p.m. your time, you went down to the Capitol, and it's just for an hour. It's
Yeah.
not anything that's a big deal. You just go down there for an hour, you hold your sign, you say your prayers, you unite, you have fun, you could maybe bring some music and dance a little bit, and then you go.
Yeah.
And I promise you, when we start doing this, everything changes. Because think about it. If this really becomes a big movement where you have a whole bunch of people showing up, then the media is going to show up. And what are they going to do? They're going to take pictures of people with signs that say infinite free, clean, wireless energy. We want it now. Dr. Rife and his machine is cure for cancer. We want it now. Unity equals peace. Love equals unity. Peace is the prize. They can't say that we're violent radicals. They can't say we're conspiracy theorists
Well,
because the
they could
moment that
say
people
whatever
look
they
in the Tesla
want.
Tower,
They turned you
yeah,
into a violent
but it's
radical.
not going to. But the thing is that it's not going to work
Right.
because when people see those signs, they're going to
Right.
look into the idea of infinite free clean energy, cure for cancer. Is this real? And then they look into it, and what do they find? Government corruption. What do they find? Technological innovation. What do they find? The spiritual truths about reality.
Good. You figured it all out. You've done great. Great job. Great job. I'm impressed. I'm
The
impressed
answers
with
are there.
your message. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for being there. And thank you for all that you've done for our country. And keep up the good work. And hopefully you'll come on my show again. And I'll see you again.
I'd love it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
You too. Bye.
How do I do this?